Welcome to Animal Behavior. This week we are going to study evolution of mating behavior. This week we're studying very important concept for the next several weeks, which is the sexual selection. The contents of this week will be the foundation for the next couple of weeks. So very important. The sexual selection is one of the most active area for research these days, and lots of developments in there in sexual selection. So I think that this week's lecture is very critical for generally understanding the animal behavior. The traditional view of mating behavior is more or less like a harmonious venture. After all, if you want to reproduce, the male and the female have to cooperate with each other. They need to mate with each other to produce offspring, so that the courtship mutual was the harmonious venture. That was the traditional view of the mating behaviors. But this view is no longer held. Now we think that the males and females, each sex, they attempt to try maximize its own fitness, sometimes at the expense of the other sex. So now instead of this traditional view, we think that there is a conflict of interest between the sexes, and that's exactly what we are going to focus on this lecture. So what's the difference between the sexes, and how this difference between the sexes contribute to the variation in mating behaviors and evolution of mating behaviors. This is the examples. That's the male bowerbirds. They construct this like a bower, and also this is the bower. They build bowers to attract their mates, and they sometimes decorate. All these are the decorations. They collect like shells, leaves, and flowers and feathers. Sometimes the human-made objects like coins or nails, and then they decorate it around these bowers. That's the satin bowerbirds, and they court females that come to inspect his bowers, and he copulate with any female that are willing, and they spend 8 months each year for courtship. This is what male bowerbirds does each year. But if you look at the females, their behavior, mating behavior is very different. The females visit several bowers, but does not mate with any bower builders on these initial visits. Then they construct their own nest. The females construct their own nest, and then the next time, during the second round of visits, she may watch 6 or so the courtship displays. It's more like a window shopping. Okay, you go to all the male bowers and look at you kind of judge which male is build the best bowers, and then she decide one of the bower builders and mate with him, and then she come back to her own nest and lay eggs and incubate her eggs and rear the young all by herself. She does all the parenting by herself, and the males doesn't help at all. So now we recognize the difference in sex roles. The male bowerbirds, they build bowers, and they court visiting females and mate with any female that are willing. But if you look at the females, she visits several bowers and then do the window shopping, and then they incubate eggs and rear their young all by themselves. Why this difference in behavior, males and female behaviors? And why do females evaluate male performance instead of the other way around? And there's also more differences in males and female mating behavior. If you look at the mating success, there's huge variation in males. Look at this male bower number one. It's number one. During the mating season, in 8 months, she mated more than 20 females here. But if you look at these guys here, these 27, 28, 29, 30, it's probably lower ranking male bowers. They mated none of the females during the entire breeding season. Huge variation in mating success in males. Some of them almost like dominate most of the matings, but others get none. But if you look at the females, the variation is usually small. Most of the females mated only once. Some mated two, but almost all mated. So that the variation is small for females, but the variation in mating success is huge for the males. Huge difference in variation in mating success between the sexes. So why do these differences between males and females? And this is explained by sexual selection, or the originally proposed by the Charles Darwin himself in this book, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. And he explained sexual selection this way: the fitness advantage that some individuals have over the other individuals of the same sex solely with respect to reproductions. And sexual selection, now we recognize this way, is a form of natural selection. We distinguish natural selection and sexual selection, but now we recognize that sexual selection is a kind of natural selection, which I'm going to explain later, that occurs when individuals vary in their ability to compete with others for mates or to attract the members of the opposite sex. And you know that why do animals do most of the behaviors? They do this to increase the fitness. And fitness is the number of the offspring produced by an individual. And this is more precise definitions of the fitness. And how to increase the fitness? Then you have to survive. You have to survive and reproduce. You have to succeed in both areas, survive and reproduce. Any selection applied at this stage, the survival stage, is called natural selection, and the selection applied at the reproductive stage is called sexual selection. Now, why does sexual selection occur? And we explain with these three components. First is the gamete size, parental investment, and the operational sex ratio. Let's look at the gamete size. The gamete size, this is the, if you see the eggs, like a chicken eggs, we can see them. They are huge. You may eat them for the breakfast. This is the egg. It's huge. And sometimes that the single bird egg, this one of them may constitute about 15 to 20% of female's body mass. So that if you look at it from the female's viewpoint, the eggs is a huge contribution to the offspring. But if you look at the male, this small bird has as many as 8 billion sperm in his testes at any given moment. And his mates lay no more than like 6 eggs per nesting attempts. So that's a huge difference in contribution to the gamete size between the male and females. And males, they have a lot of sperm, but fewer, but they have a lot of sperms. And the females lay a few, the few eggs, but each one costs a lot. And this is the sperm and eggs. Here's the egg. It's huge, and there's a tiny sperms. And this is called anisogamy. Iso means equal. Gamy is like a gametes. The male and female gametes, like a sperm and eggs. They are gamy. Isogamy means that the male gamete and female gametes are equal in size. But you see that there's a huge difference between the male and female gametes. That's why it's called anisogamy. And then, if you look at the male and female gametes in humans, also the human eggs are very fewer in numbers, maybe maybe about maybe 200. It's probably less than 300 in a lifetime. But a single man has one ejaculate containing on the order of 300 million sperms. So huge difference in the potential reproductive rate between the sexes. And the females, they contribute a lot more in the formation of the gametes. The female gametes cost a lot more than the male gametes. So if you look at the gamete size, the females are the limiting resource because they contribute a lot more to the production of the production of the female gametes. Let's look at the parental investment. Parental investment or parental care. Parental care is any form of parental behavior that appears likely to increase the fitness of the parent's offspring. Both male parent and female parent can provide care to the offspring. If the female parent provided the parental care to the offspring, it's called maternal care. If the male parent provided care to the offspring, it's called paternal care. More precise definition of the parental care is the parental investment. That's the any form of parental behavior that increase the individual's offspring's fitness at the cost of the parent's ability to invest in the future offspring. There's like a fitness trade-off between the parents and offspring. Then it's called the parental investment. And which sex provides more parental care to the offspring? It depends. It depends on the species. It depends on the group. But usually, please read this. I mean, in some species, males provide more parental care to the offspring. In other species, females provide more parental care to the offspring. But in general, care by the females is a lot more common than the care by the males. Meaning that the female parents, they provide a lot more. They invest a lot more to the production and rearing of the offspring than by males. So again, if you look at the parental investment, the females are the limiting resource. They are tied to the rearing the offspring. They invest a lot more towards the production of the offspring than are males. So the females are the limiting resource. Let's look at the operational sex ratio. And here's the frog. You know, probably the common frog species in Korea. If you go to the pond or rice paddies, you see the frogs singing at night. If you look, if it is the tree frog, the common tree frog in Korea, I mean, they are singing probably from the late April to the maybe early August. And there, the males each night they are singing, meaning that they are receptive for mating. So they may be receptive throughout the season from the late April to the early August for several months in a breeding season. But if you're a female frog, they receptive for a very brief time, maybe a night or two. That's the only time they are receptive for mating. So they go to the breeding area, which is the pond where the males are singing, and when they are ready, and they are so they mate with the male there. The ones then they lay eggs. Then once the females lay eggs and they are done for that season. So they are not receptive no more for that breeding season. So here we see the huge difference in the receptivity between the males and females in the breeding season. Males, they are potentially can be receptive for the entire breeding season, but the females are receptive only a very short time in the breeding season. So the operational sex ratio, that's the ratio of sexually receptive males to the receptive females. If you look at the population sex ratio, you know, there are all kinds of sex ratios, but population sex ratio, which is the number of males and females in a population at a given moment, this may be the 1-to-1. Okay, that's typical sex ratio usually 1-to-1. So that there's equal number of males and females at any given moment. But if you look at the if you just count the receptive males and receptive females, there's a huge difference, and that's called operational sex ratio, and it's usually skewed to one sex. It's typically males. That's because males are receptive usually for the entire breeding season, but females are receptive very short time in the breeding season. So operational sex ratio is usually highly skewed to females. So again, since a lot more males are there receptive for mating, so they compete with each other for very few receptive females. So females are again the limiting resource. So now, so why did sexual selection occur? If you look at gamete size, the females contribute more. They make a bigger gametes. So the females are the limiting resource. If you look at the parental investment, the females are the one that provide a lot more parental care to the next generation. Again, females are the limiting resource. The operational sex ratio, a lot more males are receptive at any given moment than the female. Okay, so again, the females are the limiting resource. All point to the females are the limiting resource. So what happens? What happens is that the males, they have high potential reproductive rate. They have enough gametes to fertilize the eggs of a great many females, and therefore male contribute genes to the next generation. Generally, depends on how many sexual partners he has. The more mate he has, the more eggs fertilized, the more descendant produced, and the greater number of the male fitness relatively less successful individuals. So that male's reproductive success is often limited by the access to the females, how many males he made in a breeding season. But if you look at the females, the number of mates doesn't really matter, because the gametes that a female has is a lot fewer than the male gametes. So female reproductive success is often limited by the resources. The females need resources to produce the expensive, very costly gametes. Females need resources to rear the young, sometimes by themselves. So the female's reproductive success usually limited by the resources, not by the number of mates. So the two consequences of this mating behavior, differences in mating behavior, is that males, the reproductive success is typically limited by access to the number of the males. So the male-male competition is the most dominant form of the sexual selection for males. But the females, the reproductive success is typically limited by access to resources, not by the number of mates. So that the females, rather, they carefully choose among the potentially available mates. So female choice is the dominant form of the sexual selection. So in summarize, there's a difference in gamete size and parental investments. So in one sex, they provide lower parental investment, and in the other sex, they provide high parental investment. So because this sex, the sex that provide the high parental investment, because they are tied to the rearing offspring, they have low potential reproductive rate. If you provide if you provide the low parental investment, then you have the high potential reproductive rate. Then if you have a low potential reproductive rate, you have the low levels of sexual activity. And if you have the high potential reproductive rate, you have the high levels of sexual activity. And so this difference in condition generate bias the operational sex ratio. Even if the population sex ratio is 1-to-1, usually one sex is a lot more receptive individuals compared to the others, so that the sex with the high potential reproductive rate, they typically compete with each other for the access to the other sex. But the sex with the low potential reproductive rate, they select among the mates. So the sex role, that, well, I assume that in general that the males are the males have the high potential reproductive rate, so they compete with each other for the access to the other sex. The females are the one have a low potential reproductive rate, but the sex role is not determined for each sex. The sex role is that the Robert Trivers, he demonstrated the sex that invest more should be discriminating. So it doesn't really matter between the males and females. The sex that invest more should be discriminating. So the sex with more parental investment, it doesn't matter, it has to be males and female. So any sex that with more parental investment has low potential reproductive rate, and this creates a biased operational sex ratio, and then this sex, the sex with more parental investment, will be choosy. So the sex roles are not set in stone. The sex roles are not set in stone. The sex with more parental investment, the sex with low reproductive rate, will become choosy. So the situation can be totally reversed if in some species, if males provide more parental investment, males will become choosy. And this is the examples of the male choice and female competition. In Mormon crickets, that's the Mormon crickets. Can you see this white stuff here? That's called spermatophore, and spermatophore is basically the nutritional stuff. Almost all of this white stuff that's the nutrition, and some part of it here that has a sperm. So the male and this spermatophore is sometimes constitute about 20% of the male's body. So that males mate only once. Just think about this spermatophore. It takes up to 25% of the male's body. So that once you've given this 25% of your body, you've done. You cannot mate no more. So this is the huge investment from the male side in Mormon crickets. But if the females, this spermatophore is very nutritious, what the females does is that females eat this spermatophore, so that the nutrition from this spermatophore can be converted into the production of the eggs. So this is the huge investment for males, but the females has less investment. They provide less investment to the offspring. So what happened? Now we know that the males provide more investment, and they have potentially lower reproductive rate because they can mate only once. But if you look at the females, they are competing for this resource, which is the spermatophore. So let's assume that here's a 3.2 gram female and 3.5 gram females. There's slight difference between in the weights of these two females. There's only 0.3 gram difference between these two females. But if you count the eggs, these 3.4 gram females have about 50% more eggs than these 3.2 gram females. So if you're a male, okay, you have only one chance of giving your spermatophore as well as your sperm to these females. And which female do you want to choose? You probably want to choose to this female because this female has 50% more eggs than the 3.2 gram females. So the female here, the males exercise choice among females. They usually choose the heavier females, and the females, they compete with each other for the access to the males. So now this week we have studied why sexual selection occurs. Sexual selection occurs because we have two sexes, male and female. Once the sexes, male and females, are created, they are created not equal. So that one sex, usually the females, they have the the bigger gametes. So it is a huge investment from the females. And also, usually one sex provides more parental investment to the offspring. And because of this parental investment, difference in parental investment and gamete size, one sex can have lower reproductive rate, and the other sex has the higher reproductive rate. And this difference in reproductive rate between the sexes create the biased operational sex ratio. And so in one sex, you have the higher potential reproductive rate, then you compete with each other for the access to the other sex. In the other sex, with the lower potential reproductive rate, you choose among your mates. And this concept is very important for the understanding next couple of the classes.